Elara Zayne didn't have time for nonsense, and the guy standing in her office doorway, looking lost and way too confident for someone 15 minutes late on his first day, screamed nonsense. "You must be the new intern," she said, snapping the file shut in her hands and walking toward him. "You're late. Let me guess, coffee run took longer than you thought." The man blinked, then smiled. "Actually, don't bother explaining," Elara cut in, pushing a stack of onboarding papers into his hands. "We're short-staffed, the marketing pitch is due Thursday, and if you think you're here to sit around and make TikToks, you're in the wrong department." He raised a brow but didn't interrupt. "Follow me," she said, walking briskly through the open concept floor of Zayne & Co., the boutique branding firm she'd practically built from the ground up over the last 5 years. "Don't touch anything, don't flirt with anyone. And don't call me boss lady, you get one shot." "Noted," he said behind her, tone amused. She turned briefly and caught his expression, dark brown hair, slightly tousled, sharp jaw, tailored jacket that looked expensive, too expensive for an intern. But she had no time to care about fashion choices. Not when her entire team was scrambling to land the biggest client of their lives. She stopped at an empty desk near the window. "You'll sit here. Emails are already set up, passwords in your folder." "Any questions?" He looked down at the paperwork, then back up at her. "Just one. What's your name?" "Elara," she said, already turning away. "Zayne with a Z, Elara," he repeated, slowly like he was tasting it. Then he smiled again. "I'm Oliver." She didn't bother asking for a last name. He could file papers and grab lunch orders for the next 2 weeks, and then she'd probably never see him again. But she did see him. Every single day, Oliver was everywhere. Fixing the broken printer, helping with slide decks, rewriting copy when the junior designer messed it up. He had ideas, good ones, and he didn't act like some clueless intern fresh out of college. He listened when she spoke. Actually listened. 3 days in, he brought her coffee, the right coffee. "Oat milk, no sugar, extra hot. Lucky guess?" she asked, eyeing him over the rim of her cup. He gave a small shrug. "You don't seem like a sugar kind of woman." "And what kind of woman am I?" "The kind that does everything herself and never asks for help," he said, "but still deserves to have someone show up with the right coffee anyway." She blinked. Her heart did something weird. Probably caffeine. By the end of the week, the team was buzzing about him. "That intern is weirdly good at everything," someone said. "I swear he fixed the printer with one look," another joked. Elara didn't laugh. Mostly because she was too busy watching Oliver move through her office like he'd been there for years. Confident, calm, observant. He never tried to impress. He just was. On Monday morning, she walked into the conference room and almost dropped her laptop. Sitting at the head of the table wasn't her client. It was Oliver, wearing an even sharper suit, arms folded. "Calm as ever. What are you doing?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. He stood. "Elara, meet Mr. Dalton from Vela Tech." He gestured to the older man beside him. "He's here to finalize the deal." She blinked. "Wait, what?" Oliver turned to her, looking serious. "I think we need to talk in private." She followed him out, stunned. "What the hell is going on?" "I wasn't lying," he said once they reached her office. "My name is Oliver Orion. I'm the CEO of Orion Holdings. Vela Tech is one of my companies. I came here to see how this agency worked before we made a final decision." She stared at him. "You're joking." "I'm not. You pretended to be an intern. I wanted to see how the team functioned." "What kind of leader you were?" She backed up a step. "So this was all some kind of test." His eyes softened. "At first, yes, but then I met you. And I couldn't stop thinking about you." She laughed once, sharp. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie," he said gently. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's literally what lying is, Oliver." He looked at her, then really looked at her. "I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to stay just a little longer. As the intern, because I liked who I was when I was around you." She stared at the man who had helped her fix the printer, who brought her coffee, who knew how she liked her pitch decks formatted before she even said it. The man who wasn't just some charming intern, he was a billionaire. And she'd treated him like her assistant. "I need time," she said finally, her voice quiet. "Take it," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She didn't know what confused her more, that he was the billionaire client who was about to make or break her company. or that her heart was racing because he said he wasn't going anywhere. Elara kept her expression unreadable as she walked back into the conference room, though her pulse hadn't stopped thudding since the moment Oliver revealed who he really was. His seat at the head of the table remained empty, as if waiting for her to decide what to do next. She didn't sit. Instead, she delivered the pitch to Velatech's executive in crisp, efficient language, punctuated with visuals and tangible projections. Every word was calculated, precise. She didn't fumble. She didn't glance at Oliver, who stood silently along the wall, arms crossed, gaze steady. When it was over, the client stood to shake her hand. "Impressive," he said. "You've got a sharp mind, Miss Zayne. And a team that clearly follows your lead." She smiled politely and walked him to the elevator, her heels echoing against the polished tile. The moment the doors closed, she turned on her heel and headed straight for the rooftop. It was the only place in the building where she could breathe. The wind hit her face as she pushed open the access door. The city stretched out in front of her, a jagged skyline of glass and ambition. She leaned against the railing, gripping the cold metal with white knuckles. She didn't hear the door open behind her, but she felt him. The air shifted. Her spine straightened. "I didn't follow you," Oliver said, his voice quieter than usual. "I just figured if I were you, this is where I'd go. I didn't ask you to come." "I know." She didn't turn around. "So what now? You're going to swoop in, write a check, and expect everything to just smooth over?" "No," he said. "That's not what I want." "Then what do you want, Oliver?" Her voice cracked at the edges. "Because I don't even know who I was talking to these past 2 weeks. Was it the CEO? Or the guy who stayed late helping us build a prototype board out of cardboard and duct tape because the printer jammed?" He stepped closer, but left space between them. "Both." She finally turned. His tie was loosened, his collar open. The wind toyed with the edges of his jacket. But his eyes never wavered. "I didn't expect to care," he said. "Not just about the pitch, about you. I thought I'd come in, observe, make a decision. But then you happened. You should have told me the truth. I know. I don't take betrayal lightly. I'm learning that." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since the reveal, she noticed something beneath the calm exterior: uncertainty. Like he was waiting for a verdict he couldn't influence. "I don't date clients," she said. "Then let me take you off the client list." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I already told Velatech to move forward. The deal's done. Your agency's secured the project, and I've stepped back. I'm assigning a separate team to manage the relationship from here on out." "You're serious?" "I'm very serious." She folded her arms. "So you're saying you handed off a multi-million-dollar partnership just so you could ask me on a date?" "I didn't hand it off," he said. "I made sure it was in good hands, and yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." A laugh escaped her lips, dry, disbelieving. "You're insane." "Maybe," he said, a small pause between his words. "But I can't stop thinking about the woman who told me not to flirt on my first day, then made me rewrite an entire press release because I used the wrong font size." A gust of wind blew her hair across her face. She didn't brush it away. "What makes you think this could work?" she asked. "Because I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do." She hesitated, then turned back to the skyline. "You talk about challenges like they're exciting." "They are," he said. "You are." She let the silence stretch between them. Down below, traffic crawled along the avenues. Horns, sirens, the pulse of the city. She'd spent years clawing her way up, building her reputation from scratch, learning to trust no one but herself. And now here was this man who had hidden his identity, yes, but who also stepped into her world without arrogance, who listened before speaking, who offered help without demanding control. "I don't trust easily," she said after a long moment. "Then let me earn it." She finally looked at him again. "This doesn't mean anything changes overnight. I wouldn't expect it to. And I still have a company to run." "That's exactly what I love about you," she exhaled slowly. "You don't know me well enough to say that." He smiled differently this time, less confident, more exposed. "Then let me." She stared at him for a long beat, then pushed off the railing. "I'm going back to work. I'll walk you down." They descended the stairs in silence. When they reached the office floor again, her assistant glanced up, eyes wide. "Everything okay?" she asked. Elara didn't respond. She just walked past and sat at her desk, pulling up the campaign files. Oliver didn't linger. But that night, when she finally shut down her computer and headed for the elevator, a note sat on her chair, one line, dinner, tomorrow, no work talk. She didn't smile. But she didn't throw it away either. Elara stepped into the restaurant and paused, her eyes adjusting to the warm lighting. It wasn't the sleek rooftop venue or overhyped fusion spot she'd expected. Instead, the place had wood-paneled walls, soft jazz drifting from an old speaker near the bar, and tables spaced far enough apart that conversations could be private. It felt intentional. She spotted him at a corner table. No suit tonight. Dark button down, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He stood as she approached. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to keep you waiting." She slid into the chair opposite him, glancing around. "This isn't the kind of place I thought you'd pick. I figured you might be tired of places where people come for the photos." She lifted a brow. "You're not wrong." A waiter appeared with 2 glasses of wine. She looked at Oliver. "You ordered for me?" I asked the sommelier what pairs well with ambition and a long week. That pulled a reluctant laugh from her, just one. She sipped, then set the glass down. "So, no work talk," he nodded. "Not a word." "Then what do people like us even talk about when they're not working?" He leaned forward slightly. "That's what I want to find out." She watched him for a moment, then exhaled. "Fine, let's start simple. Tell me something no one else in your boardroom knows." He didn't hesitate. "I can't eat shellfish. I've had an allergy since I was a kid." She blinked. "That's it. That's your big reveal." "I almost died at a friend's yacht party after accidentally eating shrimp dumplings. The host thought I was being dramatic. Let me guess, you still closed the deal?" "Of course." "Just with an oxygen mask strapped to my face." She actually laughed then, not polite, not restrained. "That's ridiculous," he smiled. "Now it's your turn." "Something no one knows," he nodded. She tapped a finger against the table. "I used to paint watercolors. Mostly landscapes." He tilted his head. "Why'd you stop?" "I started building a company. Time disappeared, so did the brushes." "Do you miss it?" She looked away for a second. "I don't know. Sometimes I think I miss who I was when I did it." The waiter arrived with 2 plates, and the conversation shifted. They didn't talk about branding strategies or pitch decks. They talked about cities they'd visited for layovers but never explored. About the worst first dates they'd ever been on. About music neither of them would admit they liked in front of their teams. After dessert arrived caramel tart, 1 plate, 2 forks. He leaned back, watching her. "You're different when you're not in control," he said. She narrowed her eyes. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" "Both." She set her fork down. "You never acted like you wanted control, not while you were here." "That's because I didn't." He paused. "I was tired of rooms where everyone's trying to outmaneuver each other. With you, I didn't have to pretend. You pretended to be someone else." "I meant I didn't have to pretend to be better than I am." The silence between them shifted, not uncomfortable, just heavier. Finally, she leaned back. "You said you can't stop thinking about me. Why?" He didn't flinch. "Because you don't need anyone, but you still show up for everyone around you. Because the first thing you did when I walked into your office was assume responsibility. And because when you're not trying to hold the universe together, your laugh sounds like honesty." Her fingers curled around the edge of the table. "You talk like you've rehearsed this." "I haven't," he said. "I'm just finally saying what I was thinking when I was pretending to be invisible." She didn't answer. Outside, the streetlights had come on. Through the window, the city pulsed constant, electric, indifferent. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table. "This isn't a bribe," he said. "It's a question." She opened it. "A single ticket, an art exhibit, 1 night only tomorrow." She looked up. "Why this?" "I've already seen it, twice. But I want to see your face when you see it." She stared at the ticket, then slid it into her bag. "If I go, it doesn't mean anything, I know. And if I don't, it doesn't mean I'm afraid. I never said you were." She stood, he followed. Outside, the air was cooler than expected. She wrapped her coat tighter. He held the door, but didn't reach for her hand, didn't lean too close. "I'll see you," she said. He nodded. "I hope so." She didn't look back as she walked toward her car, but she didn't throw the ticket away either. Elara stepped into the gallery just before dusk, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The building was tucked inside a historic block of Midtown, its exterior unassuming no valet, no velvet ropes, just a bronze door and a small plaque etched with the name of the exhibition. Human Distance. Inside, the space glowed with amber light, tall ceilings, and quiet strings playing from somewhere hidden. She paused to take in the first piece, a massive canvas, all stark whites and blurred silhouettes. There was something raw about it, something that felt like standing in the quiet between two people who didn't know how to reach for each other. She didn't need to search for him. Oliver was already watching her from across the room, leaning against a pillar near the far wall. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his dark coat, his expression unreadable. She walked toward him slowly, the noise of the city dissolving behind her with every step. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said once she reached him. "I wasn't either," she replied, "but I kept thinking about the ticket." His gaze didn't waver. "What about it? You said it was a question." He nodded. "It still is." She turned toward the next canvas, a stormy blend of ink and charcoal, two figures walking away from each other, one glancing back. Her voice was quiet. "I've spent so long being in charge of everything. My team, my brand, my future. I don't usually let anyone close enough to matter." Oliver's reply came slowly. "I know. But then you handed me coffee without asking how I take it. Then you rewrote a campaign brief better than my senior copywriter. Then you stepped aside from your own deal just so I wouldn't feel obligated to you. I didn't want to be an obligation." "You weren't," she said. "You were a disruption." He inhaled slightly but said nothing. Elara looked up at him. "I haven't stopped thinking about the way you made space for me to lead. Not once did you try to take over. You just fit into the cracks I didn't know were there." Oliver's voice was quiet. "If I asked you for something now, would it be too soon?" "That depends on what it is." Dinner again. "But not as a test or a gesture, as something real." She hesitated, then tilted her head. "You know my schedule is brutal. I'll wait. I might cancel last minute, then I'll reschedule." "I don't do halfway, Oliver." His voice firmed. "Neither do I." The gallery lights dimmed slightly as a new track began to play a cello, low and haunting. She turned her face toward the painting beside them, then back to him. "I still don't trust easily," she said. "I'm not asking you to trust me overnight, just let me earn it one day at a time." He paused. "Starting with tonight." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she nodded once. "Okay." He stepped closer but didn't touch her. "Okay." She met his eyes. "I'm saying yes." They left the gallery just as the city lights blinked on above them. Outside, a sleek black car waited by the curb, its driver stepping forward to open the door. She turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "You brought a car?" "I didn't know how the night would end," he said. "But I hoped." She slid into the back seat without another word. Oliver followed, and the door shut with a soft click behind them. The drive was quiet but not tense. Elara looked out the window at the blur of storefronts and street lamps, then turned back to him. "Where are we going? You'll see." The car pulled into a gated entrance, winding up a hill lined with old trees and iron lamp posts. At the top, a townhouse came into view, old brick, ivy climbing the side, warm light spilling from tall windows. They stepped out into the cool air and Elara glanced at him. "This is yours," he nodded. "It's where I go when I need to think, or not think." She followed him inside. The space was warm, lived in, the opposite of the sterile penthouses she'd imagined billionaires preferred. Books lined tall shelves and a fire glowed in the hearth. He led her through the sitting room to the back terrace where a table had been set under a string of soft lanterns. 2 plates, 1 bottle of wine, no staff. "You did all this?" she asked. "I wanted to keep things simple." She sat and he poured her a glass. Dinner was quiet at first: roast duck, saffron rice, grilled vegetables. She ate slowly, her fingers brushing the rim of her glass as she studied him across the table. "Why me?" she asked finally. He set his fork down. "Because you're the first person who's seen the version of me I don't show anyone, and didn't run." "I almost did, but you didn't." She looked down at her plate. "I don't want to be a chapter in your life," he said. "I want to be the whole book." Her breath caught. "I know how that sounds," he added, "but I've spent years building empires. This is the first thing I've ever wanted to build with someone." She stood suddenly, her chair scraping back. He looked up but didn't move. She crossed to him, took his face in her hands, and kissed him. It wasn't tentative, it wasn't safe, it was everything she'd been holding back. When she pulled away, her voice was steady. "Then let's build." He stood, wrapped his arms around her, and kissed her again outside under the hanging lanterns, the city below them glowing like a promise. Neither of them said another word that night, but they didn't need to. Because from that moment on, Elara Zayne wasn't alone, and Oliver Orion was no longer pretending. They were building something real. Together. Elara stood in the sun-drenched foyer of Oliver's townhouse, fingers curled around a mug of black coffee he'd handed her without a word. The morning light poured in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, brushing over the hardwood floors and casting soft gold across the tailored navy coat he was slipping on. "You're really going to that board meeting?" she asked, watching him fasten the top button without looking rushed. "I have to," he said. "They're voting on a merger I've been trying to kill for 2 months." She raised a brow. "Let me guess, buying out another company for the sake of expansion." He tilted his head toward her. "For the sake of ego. And I'm not interested in that kind of growth anymore." She sipped the coffee. It was strong, bitter, no sugar, just the way she liked it. "You're changing." "I want to," he said simply. "You made me realize I'd built something massive but not meaningful." Setting the mug down on the marble countertop, she crossed to where he stood. "And what's meaningful now?" His voice dropped. "You, us." She touched the lapel of his coat, smoothing it down. "Then go stop your board from making a mistake. I'll be here when you get back." He caught her wrist gently. "When I come back, I want to talk to you about something important." Her heart ticked a little faster. "What kind of important?" "Not scary," he said, "but big." She nodded. "Okay, I'll be here." Hours later, Elara sat in her own office for the first time in 3 weeks. The pitch had been delivered. The Vela Tech campaign was officially underway. The team felt steadier, more energized, but she wasn't there for meetings or catch-ups. She was there to pack. She moved slowly, boxing up old files, discarding outdated samples, and taking down the framed quote on the wall that had once been her mantra. She read it silently. Success is built in silence, not applause. Then slid it into her bag. She wasn't leaving the company, but she was stepping back. For the first time in her life, she was choosing balance. When she arrived back at the townhouse, Oliver was already there, standing on the terrace in shirt sleeves, sleeves rolled back, phone forgotten on the outdoor table beside him. "How'd it go?" she asked, stepping into the evening breeze. "They backed off the vote," he said. "I told them if they moved forward, I'd pull my capital and dissolve half their assets." She blinked. "That's a bold move." "I'm done building things I don't believe in." He turned to her. "Which brings me to what I wanted to ask you." Her heart caught. "Okay." He reached into his pocket but didn't pull out a box. Instead, he took out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her. She opened it slowly. It was the deed to a building, downtown. A historic loft space with high ceilings and massive windows. "What is this?" "A new space," he said. "For a studio or agency or both. Whatever you want it to be, I've already put it in your name." She stared at him. "You bought me a building. I gave you a foundation," he corrected. "You'll build it." "I just wanted to be the reason you had room to breathe while doing it." She pressed a hand to her chest. "I told you I don't trust easy." "I'm not asking for trust," he said softly. "I'm asking for forever." Then, from his other pocket, he pulled out the smallest box she'd ever seen. "I know it's fast," he said, voice quieter now. "But I've built companies that took years and still never felt right. You and me, this feels like the first thing that does." She opened the box. Inside was a ring, nothing ostentatious, just a single oval diamond set in a platinum band. Elegant. Understated, completely her. "I didn't fall for you because you're brilliant," he said. "I fell for you because you never once asked for anything and still gave everything." She looked up at him, eyes glassy. "Say something," he said. "I was just thinking," she whispered, "how I spent my whole life building walls because I thought love would slow me down, and now you're here and I've never moved faster." He stepped forward. "Is that a yes?" She nodded. "It's a yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into him with both hands at her waist. She kissed him hard, full of everything she hadn't said. It wasn't tentative or gentle. It was rooted in certainty. Later that night, they stood barefoot in the kitchen, passing a bottle of champagne between them, still dressed in their work clothes. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a black marker, and handed it to her. "What's this for?" He pointed to the wall beside the pantry. "If this is going to be our home, we should mark the first day." She wrote the date. Then below it, "The day I stopped running." He took the marker and wrote beneath her line, "The day I finally arrived." They went to bed wrapped in each other, no doubts between them. A year later, Elara stood in the sunlit loft, the studio now filled with canvases and design boards, the scent of linen and paint filling the air. Her team had expanded. Her hours had shrunk. She painted now, in between meetings, and one of her pieces had been selected for a gallery in Paris. Oliver walked in, holding their daughter against his chest, her tiny limbs bundled in a soft linen wrap. "She fell asleep on me again," he whispered. Elara leaned over and kissed the baby's forehead. "Because she knows you're warm and safe. She takes after you then." He handed the baby to her, then took a step back. "What?" she asked. "Just looking at my whole world in one frame," he said. "Still feels surreal," she smiled. "It's not surreal, it's ours," and it was. Everything they'd built together was real, lasting, and finally whole.